Welcome to this webinar regarding the high-quality pre-kindergarten component of student progress monitoring. My name is Tamala Olsby, and I am an education specialist at the Texas Education Agency. And today we're going to be talking about student progress monitoring. So let's get going here. Here is our agenda for this time together. As you will see, we will be going over an overview of all of the high quality components, and then we will delve into student progress monitoring. We will be looking at statute and commissioner's rule, talking about what does it all mean, and then looking at some frequently asked questions that we get here at the agency. We'll also talk about how you can meet this requirement and some resources and support that might be able to help you. And so let's just get into it. So let's start with the overview. These are the high quality pre-kindergarten components that are referenced in statute and are a requirement of every public pre-kindergarten program within Texas that serves eligible 4-year-old students. This includes districts, charters, and districts of innovation. The goal in implementing all of these components is to raise the quality of all of the pre-kindergarten programs across our great state. The focus of this particular webinar is on student progress monitoring. All of the information that you will hear today comes from at least one of these references that are listed here in statute or commissioner's rule. Please note that the high quality pre-kindergarten components are applicable to all programs, districts, open enrollment charters, and districts of innovation that serve eligible 4-year-old students using foundation school program funding. And I've given you the references in statute that will back up what was said. So here we go. What are the requirements that are associated with student progress monitoring? This slide will show you what is articulated in statute, and you will notice there are two references. One states a school district shall select and implement a curriculum for a pre-kindergarten program that measures the progress of students in meeting the recommended learning outcomes, and that's part of a long list. And then the second reference in statute says an assessment instrument administered to a pre-kindergarten program class must be selected from a list of appropriate pre-kindergarten assessment instruments identified by the commissioner. So there are two references in statute to pre-kindergarten student progress monitoring. And now let's look at what the commissioner's rule says about student progress monitoring. It says a school district or an open enrollment charter school shall measure at the beginning and end of the school year the progress of each student in meeting the recommended end of pre-kindergarten year outcomes identified in the 2015 Texas pre-kindergarten guidelines using a progress monitoring tool included on the commissioner's list of approved pre-kindergarten instruments that measure, and then you will notice that there are 5 developmental domains that are listed here. So from what this reference says in commissioner's rule, we can tell that you must do student progress monitoring at least at the beginning and the end of the school year. and you must use a tool from the commissioner's list, and the tool must measure these 5 areas. Social emotional development, which is often referred to as health and wellness, language and communication, emergent literacy reading, emergent literacy writing, and mathematics. The second reference in Commissioner's Rules says, in a format prescribed by the TEA, a school district or open enrollment charter school shall report a description and the beginning and end of year results of each commissioner-approved pre-kindergarten instrument used in the high-quality pre-kindergarten program classes. So what this says is that annually, each LEA would report not only what tool they used, but what were the beginning of the year scores and the end of the year scores for each student. And then the last reference in Commissioner's Rules states, a school district or an open enrollment charter school shall maintain locally and provide at the TEA's request the necessary documentation to ensure fidelity of all high-quality pre-kindergarten program implementation. So this basically says you should keep your records and have them handy in case TEA requests them. So what does all of this mean? That was quite a lot. So the first thing it means is that student progress monitoring for eligible 4-year-old students is mandatory. The next thing that's mandatory is the use of a tool from the commissioner's list. The next thing that's mandatory is that the eligible 4-year-old students are assessed in each of these 5 domains, and that the beginning of the year and the end of the year scores are uploaded into ECDS. And lastly, that LEA should maintain documentation of their compliance with this requirement. So that is a lot. So not only must you do student progress monitoring, it's important what tool you use, that you've assessed them in those 5 developmental domains, and that you appropriately upload the information into ECDS. This slide shows the current commissioner's list of approved pre-kindergarten instruments. This list is effective through the 2020-21 school year. So you will hear soon about what is going to happen with this list soon. It will be soon. So I want to go over what is on this commissioner's list so that you can make sure you're reading it accurately. I'm going to go from the left, and you'll notice the first column lists the different tools. And then the second column lists the publisher of that tool, just to make sure that you have the right tool. And then the next is the cost of that tool for Texas. And these have already been generated by TEA. You will also notice in the next column that you will be able to tell whether it is an online tool or a paper and pencil tool, or whether you can do both. And then the next column shows how you administrate the tool. Is it a direct assessment, more like you would sit the child down and you're asking questions or going back and forth? Or is it an observation tool? And some of them are both. Some of them includes artifacts. So the teacher would collect items to demonstrate that child has measured at a certain level. The next column tells you how easy it is to use the tool. So they've been rated anywhere from high to low. And then it also tells you whether the tool is available in English and Spanish, which most of them are. And then the last thing, you will notice those 5 developmental domains. So you will notice at the very top, the first 6 tools: Circle, Dial 4, Work Sampling System, Ready, Set, K, Gold, and Frog Street Assessment. They assess all 5 developmental domains. The next tool that's listed, LAP 3, does assess in all 5 domains, but it is not available in Spanish. So that's good information for you. And then the last tools that are approved, you'll notice that they do not have assessment data in all 5 areas, all 5 developmental domains. So what you would do as a district, if you were using one of those bottom 2 tools, is that you would assess in the domains that are available to you, and then you would need to choose another tool that would assess the other developmental domains that are missing. So hopefully that gives you a good picture of the commissioners list. Each year, a to the administrator addressed correspondence, or we commonly refer these to as TAAs, they are released every fall, and it gives LEAs information about pre-kindergarten and kindergarten assessment data. So it gives instructions and deadlines and all of that for uploading all of that data into the Early Childhood Data System, ECDS. I am going to give you at the end of this presentation a link to the current TAA. If you're listening to this webinar in future years, you would want to go to that section of our website that lists all of the TAAs and find the most current one. Let's look at a couple of frequently asked questions that come in about student progress monitoring. The first one says, how often should student progress monitoring be done? And the answer to that is that summative assessment should be done 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end of year. The beginning and end of year data must be uploaded into ECDS. Remember, we talked about that earlier. And that data shows the progress that the students made in that grade level from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. The middle of the year data can be used to determine whether any changes should be made in the instructional strategies that the teacher is using. Informal assessment or formative assessment is usually done daily by teachers as they are going through the activities of each school day and as they observe how their students are responding to the instruction. This informal assessment data enables the teacher to adjust their instruction immediately to meet the needs of students. All data, both formal and informal, both formative and summative, should be used to inform instruction. Let's look at another FAQ. Is a district required to implement progress monitoring for a 3-year-old pre-kindergarten student? So the answer to that is, if a student is served in a standalone pre-K3 classroom, specific progress monitoring is not required. Progress monitoring is required in a high-quality pre-kindergarten classroom. So if a student is served in a mixed classroom, that would be pre-K3 students that are mixed with pre-K4 students, where progress monitoring is required, a teacher should implement progress monitoring that is developmentally appropriate for students and may adjust monitoring for the 3-year-olds, or they can even exclude the 3-year-old students if it is deemed developmentally inappropriate. Student progress monitoring is a very important part of the teaching cycle, and it is considered best practice for all age groups, for both 3s and 4s, because it enables the teacher to effectively adapt the instruction in the classroom to meet the needs of students. So let's go now into how we can maybe perhaps meet this requirement. I've given you here a checklist, and I'd like us to spend a little bit of time reflecting on the items that are listed here. This slide contains the requirements that are associated with pre-kindergarten student progress monitoring. So you want to read the requirement and then consider whether you are proficient and you are meeting that requirement, or you are in the process of meeting that requirement. And if you are in the process of meeting that requirement, then you might want to jot down some follow-up, what might be what your next steps should be. This particular checklist is part of a bigger checklist that can be found on our high quality web page, and I will give you the link to that checklist near the end of this presentation. So you will notice on this checklist, it has basically 4 requirements. One is all 4-year-old eligible students are assessed at BOI and EOI using an assessment tool that is listed on the Commissioner's list of approved assessment instruments. And then, so that's one thing, you're using the right tool and you've done it at BOI and EOI. The next thing is, are those eligible 4-year-olds assessed in all 5 developmental domains, both at BOI and at EOI? The third item is that all of that data, BOI and EOI, in the 5 developmental domains is uploaded into ECDS annually. And lastly, that you are maintaining the appropriate records to document compliance with this requirement. Let's say you are in compliance with this high quality component. TEA would encourage you to consider using the pre-kindergarten version of the early childhood program self-assessment to consider more opportunities to improve your pre-kindergarten program. There is a whole section in this document that focuses on assessment. Let's look now at some resources and support that may assist you in complying with this component. So here are some resources with the links attached. So you will see I've given you the link to the Commissioner's list, to that TAA correspondence, remember, that we talked about earlier. We've also made an assessment calendar, something that you might want to look at to build into your regular school calendar how to complete all of these assessments and get all of that work done. And we've tried to help you with that. And so you might want to check that out. I've also given you the link to the frequently asked questions that are specific to student progress monitoring. There is a link to that early childhood program self-assessment, which remember has a whole section on assessment. And then lastly, that checklist that I told you covered all of the high quality components, that checklist link has also been given to you. The Early Childhood Education Division of TEA is ready and willing to support your efforts. So please visit our website and do not hesitate to contact us when needed. In closing, I just want to remind us that student progress monitoring can be used by teachers to inform their daily classroom instruction. That data can also be used by administrators to effectively communicate what students are learning, and it can guide decisions regarding the services offered to our youngest pre-kindergarten students. Thank you for joining us today.